We'll call this meeting of New Hanover County Board of Education to order. I would ask if everyone please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the posting of colors and the national anthem. Gracious God, we come before you tonight asking for your guidance. Help us to make wise decisions for all of our students. I pray for all our servicemen, whether they're stationed abroad or here in this country. Watch over them and keep them safe. Be with all our governmental leaders that they may make wise decisions that best serve all of our citizens. This I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone may be seated. Yes, go ahead. Don't they have a microphone? Yes, they would introduce themselves and tell us what grade they're in.
Hello, my name is Catherine Galloway, and I am the music teacher at the International School at Gregory.
My name is Josiah Cheney. I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Zamora Starks, and I'm in 5th grade. My name is Joel Goss, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Joy Wheeler, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name's Abigail Miguel Velasco, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Lonnie Knight, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Ty Bowie, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Parker King, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Eliza Lee, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Samaj Williams, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Ava Britt, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Tatiana Milligan, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Beverly Robinson, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Noah Sandiford, and I'm in the 5th grade.
My name is Ella Prickett, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Andrea Buddy, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Jordan Chavis, and I'm in the 4th grade.
My name is Cooper Ull, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Nina Gargiulo, and I am in 5th grade.
My name is Cadet Murray, and I am in the 12th grade.
Cadet Petty Officer 2nd Class Rollison, 10th grade.
Cadet Petty Officer 1st Class Murray, 10th grade.
Cadet Petty Officer 2nd Class Voza, 10th grade.
And just so everyone knows, the posting of the colors were by cadets from John T. Hoggett High School, Junior ROTC, or Navy Junior ROTC, Principal Dr. Steve Sullivan, Instructor Commander David Everett, and Staff Sergeant Richard Gachardo. I apologize if I messed that up. I'm a Southerner. I don't know many of those names. The national anthem tonight was sung by the 4th and 5th grade chorus from the International School at Gregory, Principal Leanne Lampley, Instructor Catherine Galloway. So thank all of y'all for participating. Ms. Adams, would you please call the roll? Here.
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 Here. Here. Here. You have before you the agenda. Any additions or deletions?
None at this time.
All right. Do I hear a motion we adopt this as our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes of the January 9 regular meeting and the January 23rd redistricting work session meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion that we adopt these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? They are approved. Next item on our agenda, recognition of achievement. We have before us Ms. Quattlebaum.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will begin our recognitions by highlighting one of our community partnerships, and it is with Wrightsboro Baptist Church. Tonight we have asked Wrightsboro Elementary Principal Dolores Overby, would she please come and stand and speak to us? And also we have Pastor Mike Lewis and some of the other 5 members of the church here to share this school and church partnership and tell us how they support our school. Ms. Overby.
Well, first of all, I am so thankful to be part of a school system that values and recognizes the importance of cultivating community partnerships. Now more than ever, our schools need the support of community volunteers to aid in helping our students achieve optimal success. At Wrightsboro Elementary, we are fortunate to have both faith-based and business partnerships. Tonight, our school board turns the spotlight on recognizing a longtime faith-based partner with Wrightsboro Baptist. The members of Wrightsboro Baptist offer both monetary and human resources daily during our instructional day. Wrightsboro Baptist always has a welcome back to school breakfast with supplies and materials to support our teachers in the classroom. In addition, the congregation provides tutors each week to assist with reading and math. They serve as proctors for our EOG. They aid in our spring fling. They open up their sanctuary for our 5th grade students to have a graduation ceremony. And of course, these are just a few highlights of our current partnership. Tonight, I would like to personally thank all of our community partners and extend our sincerest gratitude to each and every partner for always seeking ways to help Wrightsboro Elementary be the best that it can be. You all make it happen. Thank you.
My name is Mike Lewis. I'm an assistant minister at Wrightsboro Baptist Church, work with education and outreach, and just wanted to thank you for being recognized and the honor. What we do and have done is not for recognition. We're your neighbors, and we have been since the early 1900s. A family in the church then donated land right next to the school. And so we have been neighbors since the early 1900s, and we've always tried to be good neighbors. Both of us started out small, the school as well as the church, on what they called Rock Road. From our church history, it was called Rock Road. And so we started in a general store. Y'all started in a little small 2-room white school building, I understand, in looking at our history. And we've been side by side. Later, when you built the 2-story nice brick building that's still there and that was recently renovated, years and years ago that was built. And so we were able to purchase the little 2-room white schoolhouse to become part of our education building when we had a little white wooden school. So all through the years, we've been sharing together, sharing parking. 1909, the school, I think, presented our first in our white little church. The children came over and presented the first program, Christmas music program, in our facility. So y'all have been good neighbors to us. It's not just you bragging on us. The school has constantly done things for us. You provide parking every Sunday. We don't have enough parking at our facility. We have big programs sometimes, and of course that works both ways. Every day your school gets to use our parking. But again, we thank you for being a good neighbor to us, and we want to continue to be good neighbors for y'all.
Thank you.
Ms. Gail Rogers is one of our lay members, and she will share a word.
2 years ago, we adopted Wrightsboro Elementary School as our mission, one of our local mission projects, and so we have had many opportunities to help with projects that they're doing. Excuse me. And we just thank God for the many opportunities that He has given us. For many years, we have done the school breakfast, and for the last 2 years, we decided to add an extra twist to that. So we decided that we would help with school supplies. So in the month of August, and timing is crucial because you have to buy it while it's not real expensive, We had people that would bring pencils, papers, crayons, everything that was on the list for the New Hanover County website. We tried to provide according to each grade. And we had some extra stuff like Kleenex and wipes and hand sanitizer and that kind of stuff. And so I've had teachers to tell us that they've had enough to last all year without having to go to the store and buy extra stuff. On a weekly basis, we have 7 to 8 volunteers that are at school every week, some of them reading, some of them helping tutor, and some of them cutting out things. And that has been a joy to us as well as to the teachers. Excuse me. We also help cut out box tops. Our church has partnered with the school, and we cut out box tops and help package them in packs of 50 and help them send them off so they can actually get money. And last year, our church provided over $200 worth of box tops that were funds for the school. Once a month, we have refreshments that we take over there just for the teachers. We do granola bars, apples, oranges, grapes. Once in a while, you might get homemade chocolate cake. So this is for the teachers, and they can enjoy and let them know that we appreciate them as teachers and what they're doing. We had one lady from our church that hand crocheted and a whole bag of caps for when it was cold, and they were given to the school to be distributed as kids needed them. We do special projects, and last year we helped buy supplies for them, first grade, to make gingerbread houses for Christmas, and they were so excited. And I just want to read you in closing a card that we got from one of the little first graders. Dear Wrightsboro Baptist Church, thank you so much for our gingerbread house party. I love the candy you got me. Thank you for making me happy. So that's what we try to do.
I'm Peggy Cream. I'm the Minister of Music at Wrightsboro, and Mike and I both have been there for 36 years, so we've had a history ourselves with the school, and my son actually attended Wrightsboro Elementary School in the early 90s. I love the time. I am one of the volunteers, and I just want to say thank you for allowing us to volunteer, because that's one of the highlights of my week, to go over and be with the children. And I went this morning and read with them and see how they're growing and how they're learning. It's just a blessing for me, so thank y'all for that opportunity. I'm going to speak about a couple of things very briefly. For the last 2 years, we have had a block party on the school grounds on the Saturday before school began, and this is a joint project with other churches in our community. It's not just our church, but there are about 7 or 8 churches in our community that join together to do that. We have fun, we have games, we have food, and my job there has been to coordinate the volunteers from all of those churches. And I just want to say, speaking of the blessing it's been to us, my job has not been begging people to volunteer. My job has been, I've had so many volunteers that I had to find things for them to do. So it's just a joy for us to partner with the school. It's a joy to see the families and the children come to that block party and just have a good time and receive some school supplies while they're there. One thing that was we were reminded of as we came in tonight is there was a time when we have shared buildings with you all. You have shared with us when y'all had to do major renovations to Wrightsboro. Several classes were housed in our educational building for a while, and that was a joy as well to see them. My favorite event and my final thing that I'm going to share is the 5th grade celebration. At the end of the year, being in the music ministry, Stuart, our Minister of Youth, and myself, and Leslie, our Minister of Children, and we've been able to be a part of that in some way, usually doing the sound or the media and that kind of thing. But to see the children, the parents, the teachers, the staff of the school all coming together for that great day of celebration, celebrating what the children have completed in their time at elementary school and watching them prepare to take the next step into middle school. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of that. John, Stuart, do you, Leslie, say a word? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wrightsboro Baptist Church. We can't thank you enough for your strong partnership, and we are so very grateful to you all. And we hope to have a partnership with you for many years to come. So thank you again.
And folks, I would tell the audience that this isn't the only church in our community that partners with our schools. Folks think about that. They think there's the divide between what happens in the church building and the school building. But there are churches all over our community who are in our schools doing some amazing work. So I can't say enough to Wrightsboro Baptist and all the other churches out there that currently partner with our schools.
On behalf of the board, I want to thank Wrightsboro Baptist Church for all that they have done for us. You're talking about being in the neighborhood. We've been in the neighborhood with you for over 100 years. I was at the 100-year celebration that we had, I forgot now how far back it was, but anyway. So we have been your neighbors and your partners and your friends for over 100 years. And I'm glad that the lady pointed it out. You did open your doors to us when we were renovating Wrightsboro, and for a couple of 3 years we used your educational buildings during the week for our students while we were doing renovations. So it has been an outstanding relationship with Wrightsboro Baptist Church, and I just want to, again, on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for all that you do for our students out in Wrightsboro.
Would y'all come forward for a picture with our chairman? You hide back there. Okay, so next, as you all know, this is February, and we in New Hanover County Schools are proudly celebrating Black History Month. And tonight we have the winners of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Poster and Essay Contest. This year there were over 200 entries from numerous schools across the county, including homeschool students. So students, as I call your name, would you please come forward so that we may honor and recognize you for this outstanding achievement. From Laney High School, Liberty Finch. Okay. From Myrtle Grove Middle School, Jasmine Parada. Also from Myrtle Grove Middle School, Lauren Tierney. She's not here. Okay. From Castle Hayne Elementary School, Jaden McMillan. Is Jaden here? Yes. And also from Castle Hayne, Aaron Rayburn. There's Aaron. If the parents of these students are here, would you please stand so that we may recognize you as well? We thank all our teachers, principals, and counselors for encouraging our students to explore their creativity while learning more about the great legacy of Dr. King. Thank you all. Students, you want to come in front of the board members for a photo op? Thank you and congratulations.
Next item on our agenda is a further discussion of redistricting, the high school redistricting, Appendix I. I'm going to ask Mr. Anderson if he'd come forward and make his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening. Before we get started, you know, I always like to kind of review where we are, so you may be getting tired of seeing this, but I do like including it in the presentation so that you always have it. First is the copy of the guiding principles for redistricting that were approved by the board. And second is a copy of the high school redistricting timeline, and I've circled there in red where we are in that timeline. Tonight we're presenting two potential revisions to the redistricting proposal, original proposal being presented on January 9th and then discussed at the work session on the 23rd. As you can see, the final plan is scheduled for approval at your work session on February 20th, but as discussed, we could shift that back as far as March 6th before we start impacting student assignment notices. So as I mentioned, high school redistricting option 1 was presented on January 9th. In response to public comment and your input at the January 23rd work session, we're presenting for consideration tonight two possible changes. We've identified those changes as option 1A and option 1B. And we'll take a look at those individually in a little more detail. So option 1A has a modification to option 1, has 3 revisions. It modifies the original plan by revision number 1, which deals with the Forest Hills and Glen Mead neighborhoods, moving those areas from Hoggard back into New Hanover. The second revision, number 2, deals with the Village at Greenfield neighborhood. This change would move students from Ashley to Hoggard and keep the Village at Greenfield and Houston Moore together. The third revision moves Tesla Park in Georgetown from Ashley to Hoggard. In this particular revision, we're expanding the Hoggard district a little further south. And we'll take a look at each one of those revisions on the map. Here, study areas are identified where we've highlighted or outlined the 2 study areas in blue. Study areas 202 and 203 are the Forest Hills and Glen Mead neighborhoods. And as I mentioned, they're originally in New Hanover. Option 1 moved those to Hoggard. Option 1A moves them back to New Hanover. So we're recommending they stay at New Hanover High School. In the second revision, again, the study areas that include 194, 195, 199, and 200. This is the Village at Greenfield. We felt it was important to keep those students with Houston Moore subdivision, and so these study areas would be moved together from Ashley to Hoggard. In the third revision, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we actually had a study area that was in a bad location in Georgetown. So we've expanded the Highgard District south to, so that the entire Georgetown subdivision as well as Tesla Park would be moved from Ashley to Highgard. It's study areas 194 and 290. So those are the three revisions that make up option 1A. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the two maps so that you can see this is the current high school with option 1A. And second is a list of all the study areas affected. So individual study areas, what school they're currently at, and where they would be moving. As you can see, option 1A moves a total of 666 students, which is 8.62% of the high school student population. Those are, and that is a little few or a little less students than we're actually moving in option 1. For option 1A, looking at the capacity comparisons, we feel this option provides a better balance of the overall student populations, and it further decreases enrollment at Ashley High School. Looking at the free and reduced comparison, this plan also provides a better balance of students that qualify for free and reduced meals compared to option 1. There wasn't any change or very little change at Ashley and Laney. However, at Highgard, the free and reduced population did increase, and at New Hanover, the free and reduced percentages actually decrease. So looking second at option 1B. Option 1B further modifies the plan with two revisions. One is moving the landfall subdivision from Laney High School to New Hanover, and the second is expanding the Highgard district almost up to UNCW. You'll see that better on the map. So looking at these two revisions on the map, you can see in a little more detail. Study areas 138, 139, and 140 are essentially the landfall study area or landfall subdivision. This neighborhood is currently in the Laney district. Option 1B would move these study areas from Laney to New Hanover High School. And in the second revision, we expanded the Highgard district north, and it now includes area around UNCW from College Road to UNCW. These are study areas 182A, 183, 183A, 184, 185, and 162. A total of 53 students. Again, we've shared with you a side-by-side map for comparison, so you can see overall what study areas are affected and how the new districts would look. And we've listed each individual study area individually grouped by what school they're currently at and where they were going. This option does move slightly more students. We move a total of 780 students, which is 10.12%. Option 1A was 8.62%. Looking at the capacity comparison, again, this option 1B does further reduce the population of Laney, which I think was the intent. And it does provide a better balance of our high school population among the four traditional high schools. There was very little change in the free and reduced percentages in looking at the comparison between option 1A and 1B. But it did slightly reduce New Hanover High School's free and reduced percentage from 45.5% to 44.3%. So again, going back to our high school redistricting timeline and next steps, in addition to the board approving a high school redistricting plan, we know the board must eventually make some decisions about open choice and senior privilege. I also know that there have been some discussion about delaying redistricting. Tonight, we'd like to recommend maybe an alternative to delaying and ask the board to consider a junior-senior privilege. We think this would help ease the transition of high school students and also serve to delay that full implementation. So maybe that's a compromise, the junior-senior privilege being a compromise for full implementation and delaying high school redistricting.
We're also going to ask the board that we take these two options as a recommendation and combine them into one for that February 20th meeting.
Can you explain in a little more detail what the junior-senior privilege means?
Well, in the past, any rising seniors would have the opportunity to stay at the high school that they're currently attending. A junior-senior privilege would extend that to the rising junior class as well. So current sophomores, rising juniors, and rising seniors would have the opportunity to stay at their current high school if they chose.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes, sir.
Also the specialty classes, I think that we've got a little confused about the open choice in the specialty classes. So you have the STEM, IB, Lyceum, and the Marine program at Ashley. Those really weren't affected at all by redistricting, correct?
It's
correct.
They're totally separate.
If you're
in
already accepted in those programs, then you will stay in those programs.
And then we also recognize family privilege, sibling privilege.
Yes, sir.
So we would still allow people that are in the STEM program if they have brothers or sisters.
It's been a long-standing tradition with this board to not break families up like that.
Okay. And I guess, have we looked at the numbers? Because I know we're talking about two separate numbers. Was it 8% for option 1A and 10% for option 1B? How many children would be affected if we were to allow the junior-senior privilege, the sibling privilege, as well as the specialty classes?
You potentially since you're looking at about another third of the students would be potentially in that delay.
But how does the sibling privilege tie into the high schools? I understand, year round and so forth, but how does that, you mean?
I think they're talking about if you have a sibling that's in one of the specialty classes, or a junior or senior, you would allow them to actually attend that high school that they're going.
A younger sibling would
a
be
younger
allowed
sibling.
to stay.
For example, if you have a brother, if you're a sophomore and you're going to be a junior, and you are eligible for the junior privilege, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Anderson, and then you have a brother who's in 8th grade getting ready to move to 9th grade, that brother would be allowed, or sister would be allowed to attend that high school.
That really does expand. How about transportation with this junior-senior privilege in the past? That would not be provided.
Typically, you've had to provide your own transportation.
Right. But to make sure I understand, say you're a senior, you're his brother, you're a junior, so I'm visually oriented. This guy over here, what grade are you in? You're in the 8th grade.
8th grade.
Right, so he's going into the 9th grade, so therefore, since he has a brother, say at Laney, for example, he'd be allowed, even though he's not districted for Laney, he'd be allowed to go there because he has a brother there.
Right, and I think we talked about last time, for example, if you were to have a brother or sister that attended Laney, I don't think it extends that far. They actually currently.
It does slow down the process a little bit, but at the end,
transition.
It slows down the transition. And the end result is you want to reduce your capacity at your overcrowded high schools and balance those numbers out. This is a way to do it in a slower process, but at the end, you still get to where you want to be.
So,
capacity-wise, it really fits nicely. I know we delayed our middle school redistricting because of the bond renovations, and we talked about that bubble that's entering the 6th grade. This would ease the transition, lengthen that high school redistricting transition to 2 years. But within that 2 years, that bubble is still in the middle school, and it hasn't reached our high school. So, the full implementation would occur prior to that population bubble coming into our high schools.
And I know I've talked to a lot of people, some of them that are here, and I think that junior-senior privilege is important because when you have a sophomore in high school, you're developing those relationships, whether it be with friends, counselors, classes.
I can certainly understand that, and also the sibling privilege, wanting to keep family together.
so With those exceptions or accommodations for those families and students, then what are the numbers at Laney going to be? Because that's the reason we started this, was to reduce the population at that school.
Right. Well, I don't know exactly how many students that are current or rising juniors or seniors that would take advantage of that privilege. I assume it would be, a fairly large number, most of them. So I would say that it's not going to be their enrollment's not going to be any higher than it is now. Instead of getting that relief in 1 year, it would occur slowly over the course of 2 years.
What about an 8th grader going into 9th grade, hoping to stay at Laney or to be assigned to Laney because of the STEM program? Would they be able to enroll in that school?
I think they can apply to this. I think.
Well, you would have to apply to the STEM program.
Yes, but as a freshman, you can apply. I know the latest.
We have always let, if they come to us and say, I want to get into a special program, STEM, Lyceum, IB, Marine Science, we've even allowed 9th graders to go to a school, but now with the understanding that if you don't stay in that program, you will have to go back to your home school. It's not open enrollment. It is enrollment into that specialized program, but you have to stay in that program, you have to be admitted to that program in order to stay in that school, is what I believe the new policy is saying.
Well, we haven't.
I know, but that's what we talked about.
Yes, and that's something we need to work out, because these families need to understand that you make a commitment, just as we have to make, you stay with it.
I think we also need to, when we're talking about specialty programs, and I know Dr. Markowitz talked a little bit about this, but continue to improve, expand some of those programs, especially the STEM
If
program.
you look at
and the numbers
each of the programs has very different numbers, from the smallest one being marine science. As I know that Patrick is looking at ways to expand that and increase opportunities. We've had conversations with New Hanover about extending Lyceum down into the 9th grade as well. They're great programs, and you want to have as much opportunity as you can for students to access those programs.
Mr. Anderson, how does this, how does 1B and if we package them together, how does this take into account future growth? I know we're due next month to hear from
right.
the person that's going to be presenting the demographic data, but how does this how does this take into account that information?
We are planning a presentation, the demographic report for March 6th, but we've had those numbers for a while now. I think we shared those with the board a week or so ago. And when we were going through the redistricting process, we actually took that information into consideration. I think these two changes actually help. If you look at our 4 traditional high school, the one high school projected with the largest growth is Ashley. And I don't think, and I say that, but I don't think that our growth at the high school level over the next 5 to 10 years is enormous. I would say that our growth district-wide over the next 5 to 10 years is a much more manageable growth, but lowering the enrollment at Laney is good. Leaving it over capacity, I think, also ties into the board's long-range plan. Hopefully we'll build a new middle school, and Trask will become part of Laney. So we have a long-range plan to accommodate some additional students at Laney. So again, this option, I think, works well with the demographic report.
So the bubble coming up from middle school is going to affect which high school the most? What are we projecting?
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty even across the district, actually. You can see most of, with few exceptions, most enrollment at the elementary level is going down. at the individual schools, with few exceptions to that. Because we have such a large number of students graduating in 5th grade and a smaller number of students coming in the kindergarten level. So it's because there's so many high schools or so many elementary schools, I think the middle schools across the board are being affected by that. Which ones that's going to impact most, I think, is the ones that are currently overcrowded the most. So I think that's the importance of redistricting our middle schools, next year, so that we can reduce that population, not only before we start the renovations at Noble and Trask, but before that bubble really passes through and they feel the full effect of it.
So we've looked at the fact that maybe we were moving some potentially aging neighborhoods, and we've balanced that so that and we've kind of planned for that into the future.
We have, and I would say that in the demographics report, that was the one thing that surprised me. The demographer will talk more about this next month, but he's predicting a lot of turnover in homes and neighborhoods, where neighborhoods are aging out and younger couples moving out of apartments and into single-family homes with school-age kids. And we're seeing that at not the downtown schools, but in many of our schools within the city limits.
My other question has to do with C-Tech. That's going to be hopefully in the northern part of the county and would potentially affect, I would guess, Laney's numbers the most. Have we taken into account C-Tech and that potential impact? I know we can't plan exactly, but it's more than likely going to affect Laney, Hanover, Hoggard more so than Ashley.
We've considered that they will grow by 40 students next year, and then we've projected their growth out to 400 students.
What year?
Well, we weren't projecting the full 400 in 4 years, but I think it was in 5 years. I'd have to go back and look at that to make sure, but
because you're looking at a small freshman class this year, a slightly maybe a larger one, but still not to 100. You won't be able to fully implement the 100 per grade level until they move over to the Siberia Road complex.
If it were not for the early colleges and C-Tech and Career Readiness Academy, that's about 600 students that we would also be having in this mix if it were not for those programs.
Which is why we need to keep making sure that we're doing the best we can for those programs, because they really are important.
Absolutely. If you look at our demographic report and look at the growth in 10 years and compare that to the long-range building plan, I think you've done a very good job of accommodating that and meeting that demand. If we were able to build a middle school, which is far less than building a new high school, you're going to gain about a little over 700 students, and you expand those specialty schools, especially C-Tech, going up to 300. You're just over 1,000 extra seats in at the high school level, which meets the growth that we're projecting.
Dr. Markley, what's the usual bond cycle, and like in a perfect world, if we were to need another middle school that Mr. Anderson talked about, when would that be available?
I would tell you that we need to start having our bond discussion now. We're coming to not to the close of our current bond cycle, but we've got the elementaries are being built. Wrightsville Beach is the next and last project on that list that we are already in the design phase. So I would say that next year we need to be having that discussion. And then I would say that when you're prioritizing programs, middle school probably becomes project one in a new bond cycle, but you're still probably, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 years from anybody stepping into a new building at the most optimistic outlook.
Right.
Mr. Anderson, there's been some suggestions from about building a new high school. Could you address the cost of, if we could find the land, and the cost of the high school?
I mean, probably getting a little ahead of myself because we do have the demographic report coming and our long-range plan. As you know, we're going to be updating that for the 2020 calendar year. But I think in looking at our enrollment projections, as I mentioned, we are going to continue to grow. There's no doubt. I mean, anyone can drive around Wilmington and New Hanover County and recognize that as a school system, we're going to continue to grow. But I do think it's a much more manageable growth. We're not going to be growing by 400 to 600 or 800 students a year. So looking forward, the other thing we know is we're the second smallest county in the state, and we're very densely populated, and the availability of land isn't getting any easier. So I think looking forward, if we have the opportunity to build a middle school and build that middle school on property that you already own, it saves money. And the difference, I mean, a high school, middle school may be 30 million, a high school might be 60 million. I mean, you look at all the athletic spaces and so forth, it's, the costs are continuing to increase. But I think also, looking forward, we know we have a site at River Lights, and I will mention, you guys asked me to meet with River Lights, and the contact person I have there, and my counterpart, has been out of town. We're actually meeting next week, so I'll follow back up with you on that. But
that
we know that
elementary sits in the area we obviously assume is going to be a high growth area, and that's near the south end of the county.
we are projecting a high growth across the K-12 in that southern area. So we know it's in an area where we need the elementary school. But again, that growth is more manageable. We can pick up additional seats if we were to replace Mary C. Williams and replace Pine Valley. And I also think that going forward, we have the opportunity to expand our schools. You know, when we built, we built Parsley Elementary School. It was probably designed for 500 students, and the capacity today, because of class size reduction, is 425 or something. Don't quote me on these numbers. I'm really, but you understand, the K-12 class size reduction. We built one new elementary school, but K-12 or K-3 class size reduction actually equated to about 3 elementary schools. So you get one ahead and then 3 behind. Going forward, I really think we have the opportunity to expand our existing facilities, save on infrastructure costs, save on property costs, and building the capacity where it's needed. The nice thing is that if you build it where it's needed, where the students are, you also will avoid, or at least certainly reduce the need for redistricting.
You mentioned the Trask potentially becoming part of Laney as the 9th grade center. How many students does Trask accommodate? Do you know?
It's 750 some. Is the capacity.
I visited last week, and she said they had over 700 at Trask at this time.
So what does that do to these numbers if you create a 9th grade center at Trask?
It puts capacity in the place that when you're looking at growth, our growth is going to be north and south, so that gives you capacity in the north where you're expecting additional growth.
So what does it do to the numbers at Laney when you do that?
It gives that high school additional capacity. So you've got, even with this plan, Laney is still somewhat over capacity, so you absorb that extra capacity, and it gives you room for growth.
But I think what he's asking is, what would the population of Laney be? And I would estimate probably about 2,700.
I don't think you can know what the population would be.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about if you had 700 students to 2,000, you're going to have 2,700.
But would not be in the main, all be in the main building.
No, it would be in the on the 9th grade, and the big thing they keep wanting to say is it's not a 9th grade center, it's the 9th grade Laney.
Yes.
Well, so
if we can find the space, that's the most important thing.
Well, yes, I mean.
What are the feeder middle schools to Laney?
Holly Shelter, Trask, parts of Noble are the three primary.
The three primary.
Okay, so we should be able to look at that and know how much our population would drop if the feeder from Trask changes, right?
I guess I was assuming when I mentioned that a new middle school was built too. But no, I think I understand what you're saying. And does the demography report reflect that the growth, it reflects areas of New Hanover County where there's going to be growth?
Correct.
Is that one of the areas that it concentrates where growth would be?
As Dr. Markley said, we're going to have growth primarily in the southern and the northern parts of the county, and inside in the middle of the county, we're going to see some turnover in neighborhoods. But the majority of our growth in new homes and new development is going to be in the north and south.
So utilizing Trask, in other words, would be in conjunction to building a new middle school.
Correct.
Correct.
They'd be simultaneous.
Yeah, we think that we have the property at Seabury Road, that we can put both a CTEC program there and there's plenty of land to build the middle school right there without having to purchase additional land.
That's right. We would need to build that middle school before we would convert Trask into Laney.
Okay, so that's a pressure release for Laney, is your point. But we don't know exactly what the number would be.
Their capacity?
No, sir. By shifting to Trask, we don't know how much we're pulling off of Laney once that happens.
Assuming you move your freshman class over, typical freshman class is 400.
400.
Right.
But that's a rough number because in the old days, every freshman took the same classes, but I've got freshmen now taking classes that would traditionally have been upper level classes. And that's why it works at Trask, because they're right next to each other, so you can have classes in both buildings. It'd be primarily ninth graders.
What are the odds of increasing enrollment in the WEX program in the Isaac Bear?
Well, we're in discussions now with the university about the building at Isaac Bear. That's really the only thing holding back their growth. They've been very receptive in terms of those conversations, but that's a ways down the road. That's a university building, so it's got to become part of their long-range plan. We met with the staff over there, and they want to expand that program, but they're locked into that building they've got right now.
Okay. So, Mr. Anderson, can you summarize where we are based on the additions? Let's say 1B, as I understand it, is including landfall, and it would also include Vantage, Lucia Point, and Coval Farms would be going to Hanover.
That's correct.
Am I thinking right?
Correct.
Does it go that far up? Coval up that? Does it?
It does.
Okay, so if, and then in addition to that, you're talking about junior, senior privilege, and now there's talk of adding sibling, right, privilege. And I think Mr. Hayes' example was if an older child is in a high school, then subsequent children have the ability to stay in that high school. Is that what sibling privilege means?
Well, they both have to be in the building at the same time. If he's a senior heading out the door and the other child's in 8th grade who'll be in 9th grade next year, that's not a case of sibling privilege.
Okay.
It's something that we do for families to make sure their children are in the same school together.
I'm asking the questions because I think this needs to be clear to the room what we're proposing or what you're proposing.
Mr. Shell, just to clarify what Mr. Shell was saying for the sibling privilege, let's say you have a rising senior and a rising freshman. Now you have the sibling privilege, so the freshman's there.
Correct.
Senior graduates, the freshman doesn't have to move. The freshman can stay at the current high school, right?
That's the privilege.
Right.
The way I understand it.
Even though,
Well, not necessarily,
even though
correct?
their brother or sister is graduated, they're there at the same time. So you have one that's a freshman, one's
Yeah, if they get there because of senior privilege, you're not going to move. It's not a case of when the sibling goes, they've got to leave.
Okay,
Just
so
wanna-
we're
just
gonna
wanna
say
make
we're gonna
sure.
keep them there.
Yeah, we do that, for example, at Coddington and Eaton.
Yep.
So if a sibling comes in and the other one moves out, we don't send the sibling back.
Okay, so they don't have to apply.
But they do have to be there.
Yeah. it's, you gotta be there. But how you get there, well, once you're there, you're there.
Once you're there, you're there.
At the
Correct.
initial point. At the initial point.
So-
So, okay, good.
Yeah, I initially did not want to do this now. I wanted to do it in the phase where we were gonna do the middle schools. And I'm beginning to think that might be the best thing, since we'd be having the sibling, not that I'm really recommending that, but it ties in better because we're talking about planning and implementing this for the next school year, which is what, 18, 19, then the 19, 20 during the middle schools, then 20, 21, the elementaries. Whereas the middle schools would be done 18, 19.
1920.
1920. So that might make more sense, because then it's less confusion. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a little confused.
Well, the one thing I want to be sure of too, and I understand that you took into consideration the demographics, but I want to be very sure that we're not going to move these students again down the road, because I've heard that concern voiced, and we haven't seen the demographics, and I want to be very sure that if we're talking about moving students, and I you know, having high schoolers, and I've said this to I think Dr. Markley, you know, we're just starting this process, and high schoolers are very invested in the actual school itself. They're there after school, they're in sports, they're in drama club, they're in art club. It's very different from elementary school. In elementary school, the parents are very invested in the school. The kids get on the bus at 2:30, but in high school, it's a very different animal, and I want to be very careful that we're doing right by the students. If we're talking about moving them, and I really am struggling with talking about, and here we are in February, saying to a sophomore in August, you're going to a new school. You've done a very good job of planning this, and a very thorough job, but
I understand the
looking at these
concern
numbers,
completely.
it's tough. I'm looking at a sophomore going, you know,
And,
sorry, you're in the wrong class.
Yeah, we're confident that we're presenting a plan that we're not going to be back before you in 5 to 10 years, you know, wanting to redistrict high schools again. You know, we think that this does balance our enrollment among the 4 traditional high schools, and, you know, looking at the demographic report and the enrollment projections, and if we're able to implement, you know, our long-range building plans, you know, we think that we can more than adequately accommodate the growth.
Mr. Anderson, I know that you followed the guiding principles that the board established, but I remember the first speaker at our last meeting who questioned why we moved children out of a school and moved students in. So that's a dilemma for me too. If we're trying to balance out the enrollment, why are we shifting some?
Are you talking about those that are under capacity? That was Hanover, right, that you're talking about? We moved some out when they were under capacity to begin with.
We moved some, and Hoggard too, we moved some out of Hoggard and some in.
It's the same thing with Ashley.
And yes, and with Ashley as well.
When you look at the guiding principles,
if we change the guiding principles, can we keep them?
Well, no, I think we do that to try to comply with your guiding principles as closely as possible. You know, we were doing that when we were trying to eliminate high school satellites.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we agree that diversity is important in our schools. We want to try to eliminate satellites. We want to you know, balance the high school enrollment amongst the 4 traditional high schools. We look at free and reduced lunch percentages, and when you do that, you have to look at the plan as a whole. You really cannot look at one individual study area, and we're looking at your guiding principles as a whole, and trying to provide a comprehensive plan that best meets that. Also knowing that we do not want to do a complete high school redistricting. You know, we're really proposing some you know, some shifts in current district lines that best meet your guiding principles.
I mean, I like the plan as a whole. I think you have done a very good job of adhering to the principles. I understand the shifting that you had to do, making sure that you weren't splitting neighborhoods. You know, I get all that. I feel like it's a much more balanced plan than we started with.
All right, so then at our next meeting, we'll present this plan for you to consider. We'll obviously got another round of input coming up now, so we'll listen to that as well. And we'll do this.
I guess we should move the timeline then. Is it that the timeline would be, if we were to approve something, it would be the March meeting, not.
You can decide at the 20th to approve or not approve, or if you decide at the 20th you need more input, you've got one more backstop in March to look at if you need it, if that makes sense. So it's tentatively scheduled for the approval of the 20th, but you can decide to if you get some input, that you want to see another revision before the March meeting.
The only thing I would say is because we've made, I don't want to say significant changes, but we've made changes to, if we get with option 1B, an entire neighborhood, I think we should give them the opportunity to be heard too at that February 20th meeting before we were to make a decision.
All right.
Any other questions, comments?
Just a question about the process moving forward. You're going to hear from the public at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
We switched up our normal routine so that they could hear this before they had an opportunity to speak. So if they had some input on what they've just heard, to give them an opportunity.
I think good. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, excuse me, call of the audience. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. However, time does not permit dialogue between the board and the community. While the board welcomes residents to share their views, the chairman retains the right to limit discussion to a particular topic when such comments become slanderous or personal in nature. Additionally, any speaker may provide the board with a written statement if their comments would extend beyond the allotted time. I mean, we set a time, we ask people to keep their comments within that time. However, the board has determined that if you have more to say than you can get in the 3 minutes, we're going to be like the U.S. Congress. You can revise and extend your remarks, but you would need to present us with a written copy of what you wanted to say. All right, having said that, we have had several people sign up. I'm going to go down the list, beginning with Bobby Garcia. Bobby Garcia. Okay. Angela Davis.
I really do think it'd be better to wait until the middle schools.
Hi. I was actually first last time, so I'm glad you remembered me. Well, that happened, but I did. And before I get started, I would like to thank Star News for putting me on the front page with my concerns. I do appreciate whoever you were. A few things I think have already been pointed out tonight, and I understand, I didn't understand I couldn't just ask questions and get answers. So I guess I'll just make my point. When all this started, I was really shocked with the whole redistricting. I never heard about other options, whether it be temporary trailers, adding on to Laney, or other options than just saying we're going to redistrict. I have not heard any other research or any other options on that. And I also have questions about the open enrollment. If you remember from last meeting, I am geographically closer to Hoggard, but I am slated for my daughter to go to Ashley, that is a little over 8 miles from my home. And with open choice, could I keep her at Hanover, where she wants to be, where she wants to do Lyceum? You know what you guys were talking about. I think, Ms. Eastep, you're kind of in the same boat with your children, it sounds like, with whatever programs they want to be in. And I don't think it's fair to her or any of the other kids. I think there needs to be more research done. There's still too many unanswered questions. And I approached this in the last meeting, and I think it was brought up a while ago, which I appreciate. My scenario was, and I think you pointed it out, Ms. Nichols, the original assessment was to take 100 children from Hanover and take them and put them in Ashley, and turn around and take 95 from Ashley back to Hanover. For 5 students, you're going to disrupt all this for 5 students. That's not the only, just for me, for my family, it impacts me. That's what impacts me. And I understand this all started with Laney being overcrowded, but why should the other schools, why is all this switching? I haven't heard the answer to that. I tried to get my daughter into Hoggard last year, and they told me there was no room for one. But per these guidelines, it looks like this coming year, over 200 students are going to be there, new students. They didn't have room for my one, but now they're going to have room for 200 and some. I don't, there's so many unanswered questions. Another thing I haven't heard of is transportation cost. It's going to be more buses on the road, more gas. You're going to have more drivers. Who's going to, get all these kids to where they need to be, after school programs, etc. I just don't feel like the principles that were adopted are all being abided by. I'm not going to sit here and go down every one of them, but I just think there needs to be some more thought put into this. I feel like it's just been a rush, and I don't understand why.
Ms. Davis, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay. But in closing, I would just like for you to think that it's just not numbers, they're kids. My ninth grade, she's in ninth grade. This will be her lasting memories. And to throw her into high school and then change it, her whole world, is very unfair. You have to think about their emotions. They'll be sad, they'll be depressed, leaving their friends. It's just not numbers. Thank you.
Kathy Coble. Kathy Coble. Gary O'Malley. Gary O'Malley. Jenna Fimble.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Anderson, and the board for your work on this. I do believe that these 2 options are better for all of our students in Hanover County. I have some other comments as well, but I'll email everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Worrell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question because I was at the last meeting, and it's not, I'm just saying that as an open question. We're moving kids back and forth, but to my view, the 4 high schools, you're over capacity. The numbers are the numbers. So you can move the shell around, but when is the board going to say, enough's enough, we need to build a school? Because you will get back to here in 5 years. You will be back in 10 years. The school system needs to be a system. And you have to project out, yes, and you're correct, Steph. You have to figure that out before you move ahead. So, but right now we're in trouble, and you're just moving kids around. I have a kid that's in the school district. He's affected, but I understand that. But I think it's the board's responsibility to project this out, and I don't think you've done that correctly, because right now your schools are all over capacity. because it doesn't fix a capacity issue. It just moves it around. So that's all I have to say, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
William Condon. William Condon. Deidre Condon. Deidre Condon. Crystal Morgan.
I'm a parent of an Ashley student, and we are part of the 100 plus being moved from the Masonboro area from Ashley to Hoggard. I'm here to plead with the board to please reconsider where the lines are drawn on the map in this area. Our connected neighborhoods of Crosswinds, Wedgefield, Hidden Valley, and Woods Edge are being divided, and maybe you didn't realize that the proposed map will split up neighborhood kids and families that have been together for the past 10 to 12 years, all the way from kindergarten to middle school to now freshmen, sophomores, and even juniors in high school. These students have gone to school together, they've carpooled together, they've played on school sport teams together, participated in school clubs together their whole school careers. Splitting them up for the last 2 to 3 years of high school just seems extremely wrong. And it may not seem like a big deal to you, but to a teenager, it is devastating. If you allow these neighborhoods to be split, you're preventing us and our student drivers from being able to carpool with their friends and their neighbors. We rely heavily on carpooling for after-school practices, games, morning workouts, club meetings, tutoring, study sessions, and other various activities. On the proposed map, you are moving 100 students between St. Andrews Drive and Wellington Avenue who currently attend New Hanover. You're moving them to Ashley only to turn around and move the 100 Masonboro area students away from Ashley. That doesn't make sense. This proposal would displace 200 plus students from New Hanover and Ashley with very little benefit to the overcrowding issues you are trying to address. However, there will be a significant impact to the students and their families. Therefore, I am asking the board to strongly consider leaving these two groups of students in their current districts. However, if a change must be made to the Masonboro neighborhood, a better option for the students and their families would be to draw the Ashley-Hoggard district line at Mohican Trail, which is not connected and is only 3 more streets over, and then the neighborhood would not be split, thereby keeping us all together as a neighborhood school. I would hope your goal would be to impact as few students as possible to address the overcrowding issues. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Edwin West.
Hi, I'm Edwin West. I'm a junior at New Hanover. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you all today. I'll be very quick. I just wanted to reiterate a few things. First off, I can't emphasize enough the importance of keeping students in their current schools. I understand that you all have made changes to keep more students where they are, and I hope that you will continue to make more changes. With the students that are inevitably redistricted, though, I would ask that a grandfather clause not only for juniors and seniors, but for each student be enacted, so that not only so that no student has to undergo the harsh transition of changing schools. Finally, I just want to urge the school board to find a long-term solution to this problem so that only one set of students is affected. I trust that you are considering all the options and that you will make your final decision with the betterment of the students your first priority. Thank you. Thank you.
Skylar Kelly. Oh, okay. Thank you. Natasha Murray. Natasha Murray. David Adger.
Good evening, members of the board.
My name is David Ager. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of all of our high school students. As a Wedgefield resident for the past 14 years, we know a lot of families in the Crosswinds, Wedgefield, Hidden Valley, Woods Edge neighborhoods, and know that all kids have grown up with each other and attended the same schools with each other from Bellamy to Myrtle Grove to Ashley. We've had firsthand experience with carpooling to school, school events, neighborhood parties, etc. These kids all hang out together and drive each other to school as well. Breaking up the bonds that these children and families have developed over the years can be quite a difficult thing, especially for the children and teenagers. I would like to request that the board think about making Mohican Trail the southern border for the Hoggard District, since it is a street by itself without the interconnection that we at Wedgefield, Crosswinds, Hidden Valley, and Woods Edge have with each other. However, let's for a minute go beyond choosing which roads go to which schools and think about the ramifications of students attending one school for a couple of years and then getting yanked out of that school and thrust into another one with a completely different set of students, teachers, coaches, etc. The high school years are the formative years for these young adults. We already know about how difficult it can be for these children. Trying to fit in with their peers, trying to make friends, staying out of situations that invite bullying, either in person or through social media. The environment surrounding today's teenagers is certainly nothing like it was when we were kids. We've all seen plenty of instances in the news, on social media, or other avenues in our daily lives about how scores of students are bullied, ostracized, picked on, made fun of, whatever you want to call it. Placing our students in different schools halfway through their high school career is just asking for an increase in these terrible situations. Our high schools should be a safe haven for our students. They shouldn't have to worry about having to start over at a new school because they happen to live on a street that all of a sudden is getting redistricted to another school. Perhaps an alternative would be a more gradual approach. Perhaps redistricting can occur, but start with just rising ninth graders. This is already a time when they are starting a new school, and they will have to develop new friendships at this point anyway, since the middle school attendance lines don't correlate with the high school attendance lines. For sophomores, juniors, and seniors, allow them the opportunity to stay where they have already developed these relationships, if they choose to do so. Allow them to thrive where they have already put down roots instead of throwing them into a tumultuous situation. They are already stressed enough trying to make it through their teenage day. Let's try to keep that stress to a minimum by allowing 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to finish out their formative years at the school where they started. Finally, one further thought. I was around during the middle school redistricting several years ago. During that wonderful time, a lot of time was spent going through the planning stages. I remember going to several months of meetings, and the decisions were taken very carefully and with a lot of planning. It seems like this high school redistricting is moving extremely quickly. I would like to suggest that the board continue to work on the right solution, but in order to make sure that all avenues have been properly addressed, that the actual changes don't take effect until the 2019-2020 school year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rebecca Trammell.
Good evening, everyone. I just appreciate this opportunity to be here tonight, and I also just want to thank, I'm sorry, what is your name? The one who's been doing all
Mr.
the...
Anderson.
Yes, thank you so much for listening to so many people at the last meeting and taking into consideration everything that was said. 2 weeks ago, on my way walking into the place that we stand right now, I noticed some kids playing happily and just joyfully right across the street at Houston Moore. There was no adult really watching them, but they were having the time of their life. They had very little to play with. And I thought to myself, who is going to speak for them? I listened to many concerned parents last time talking about how difficult this transition can be at such a tenuous time of their lives. Some were frustrated because they had moved neighborhoods based on the schools their children would attend. Some had even moved 3 times. But what about the children whose parents can't move to get into a different school? And why are some schools preferred over others? I started to do some homework. I went on schooldigger.com, and I found that some schools have 4 stars. Some schools have 2 stars. And there are some schools in our district that have 1 star. And I thought that might have something to do with why people want their children to go to specific schools and why they'd be willing to move. Maybe my heart for advocacy came honestly from my mom. She called up the school board when I was a kid, and I'm not going to say how long ago. I went to Blunt Elementary after having gone to Wilmington Christian Academy for several years. And my mom noticed that there was a big difference. She called up and finally, after she was like, you know, these kids aren't really learning. Teachers are going to the teacher's lounge instead of teaching. And then she was told, what did they expect? What do you expect? They go to a lower socioeconomic school. And she said, I expect my teachers, my children to learn because they can. Now, the definition of public is it belongs to all of us, which means we can't treat them as if they're private, and that takes a paradigm shift for some of us in here. Because the old Deluder Act of 1647 ensured that that it was so important to the Puritan colony of Massachusetts that everyone learned how to read and write and do basic arithmetic because it was important to the good citizenry of our nation. And that's when public schools began. We have to ensure that all children have an equal opportunity to excel. And when I also went on the website, I realized that Lyceum doesn't look like the rest of New Hanover High School. Why is that? And I know that I'm out of time, but the question I have, we have neighborhood schools, and that's great. But if the median income of certain schools is greater than another, it will cause disparities. And so it's good to have neighborhood schools so that we don't have to bus kids everywhere. But the question I have for all of us here tonight is, who is my neighbor?
Thank you. George Roundtree.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm not here to be critical. You have a very important task before you. And what makes it important is the kids, the children, whom your decision will affect. I mean, old people like me, it's too late. Well, I went to Forest Hills School where we had 40 people in the 4th grade. And I'm old enough to remember each of you running for office the first time for this school board. And I remember that you ran on the proposition that neighborhood schools was what was best for the children of this county. And I heard the chairman invoke divine assistance at the commencement of the meeting from the Almighty that the decisions made would benefit children, all children. Did I hear that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you did.
And so what I'm suggesting is that the concept, the idea is sound, but when the idea's result is uncertain, when one must assume certain things, or one must project certain things. I'm reminded of the matter I heard early last week, a speech by an economist. Now, there's a guy who's wrong 85% of the time, still gets the same amount of money every month. And what I've heard you, ladies and gentlemen, told tonight is that the assumptions, the projections are hopes. That's what we hope. We don't know. Now, I represent 4 families whose homes are in Coville Estates. There is a junior, rising senior. There are 2 8th graders, rising 9th graders. There's a freshman, a rising sophomore. And when you talk about what's in the best interest of children, you've got to consider, I suggest, you don't have to do any of that, suggest you consider what the parents have planned. What's mama thinking? If you look at one of the finest schools in this entire county, you must find excellence at Wrightsville Beach School. And why? Because mamas and daddies play a huge role in the success of the education process at that school. I respectfully ask that you leave Coble Estates at Laney, and that you realize in so doing that you probably should put this all off for a while. Thank you.
That was the last person who had signed up to speak. Next item on our agenda, administrative personnel.
None.
We have none, okay. Next item on our agenda, Head Start. Head Start Board Liaison Report, Appendix A. Mr. Shell.
He's gonna be going quite a bit with this.
Take 5 on the phone.
You want to go ahead and do it now?
Yes, because.
All right, I have been asked to take 5, and this is a real 5. So.